am a data scientist at Microsoft and an architect for data science and artificial intelligence. And I'm very sorry for my broken English. English is not my first language, firstly. Secondly, it is also very, very early here. It is around 4 a.m. So I've just woken up and I'm going to present to you certain interesting, let us say, revelations that speak to Hilbert's first problem. Just to give you a little bit about my thinking, as you can see here, I work primarily on foundations in mathematical logic. In the spectrum of data science, we are deeply involved in a theory known as information theory, where we are able to attribute certain bits of data to information. And the more bits we are able to avail for certain information that we wish to store, we are able to kind of extend, right, the ability for storage. And from here comes the following thinking. The continuum hypothesis is actually quite a well-known problem. And for many mathematicians here, as I'm an engineer, I'm a bit more amateur than you are. But however, there are certain revelations that have taken place in the, let us say, in the past 3 years that have revealed certain possibilities into the resolution of this problem. We are no way claiming that we have ultimately resolved the problem. It is a very technical, very deep problem. And what we are trying to do, in fact, is actually understand what it means for cardinality of sets to exist between the natural numbers and the real numbers. Now, let me speak a bit about this, because a lot of us might be wondering why this is actually important, or why do we even care about such a thing? Dealing with infinity is actually a very, it is a very complex problem, in the sense that when we deal with infinity incorrectly in our, let us say, our exposition, our theory, in our work, when we speak about infinity, there are multiple spectrums of infinity that one can talk about. And right now, we have no known means of exactly expressing what infinity is. And this may seem like quite a absurd idea almost, but the intent is that when we speak about infinities in natural numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., and we speak of infinities in the real number spectrum, which we will get to, we are in fact talking about two very different things. The idea, and if I may go back one slide, my apologies, the idea is that, is there a set of numbers that one can find strictly between the natural numbers and the real numbers? This is the question. If we are to find such a set, we are able to establish the multiple layers of cardinalities that exist between the natural numbers and the real numbers. And this is what we are trying to establish at this point, that there is such a strict set between the two. Now, how we will do this is derived from how exactly George Cantor and his initial proposition that there are, in fact, no numbers in between the two that have a strict cardinality, or there are no sets between the reals and the beg your pardon, between the naturals and the reals that have a set of numbers that are strictly, as you can see here, injective and surjective. So what we mean is we cannot find a set of numbers is what the initial problem statement reflects. We cannot find a strict set of numbers that exists between the naturals and the reals that are in one-to-one connection with either the naturals and the reals. This is the specific problem. We have found that using the exact methods that have been derived by George Cantor, which is the diagonal method, which enables us to strictly find that there is always one additional real, in addition to every natural number. Using this fact, we are going to find another set of real numbers that are strictly between that of the naturals and that of the reals, that very specifically has the ability to perpetuate and elucidate further the Cantor argument against the naturals and these new set of reals that we will generate. How, in fact, we generate these reals speaks very specifically to, I'm sorry, I am skipping a few slides. My humble apologies to all. We will get back to this in a second. But what we are trying to do is find a set of numbers. I'm coming back to all of this. My humble apologies. We are humbly trying to find a strict set of numbers that are between the natural numbers and the reals. And what we have found in this time is that there are a certain set of sequences, as you can see here, irrational sequences that speak very specifically to the kinds of real numbers that we can find between the reals and the natural numbers on the spectrum. And the way that we actually establish that such a sequence is in fact strictly between the naturals and the reals is by using the Cantor argument strictly on these sequences. And one is able to establish, based on these sequences, that such sequences are diagonally more, diagonally, strictly cardinally more, cardinally higher than the naturals and cardinally lower than the reals. And this is the very strict, this is the very idea that we are trying to perpetuate. As I have mentioned to all of you, I am very sorry, I am an engineer. I have not presented before at a mathematical consortium. And so I am looking very much to learn from this experience here. But these are the ideas that we are trying to perpetuate here. It is that we have found bits of numbers that follow this schema. And the schema can be very directly proven to be diagonally cardinally higher than the natural numbers and cardinally lower than the reals. And the way in which we actually establish this is via the diagonal argument. And very strictly speaking, when we see arrangements such as this, one can in fact use the diagonal argument as we have done here, over here. One can demonstrate, and of course the paper is available for everyone to read in a strict, in a very formal manner where all of this is established. But what we have in fact is a diagonal argument that applies to such a schema in the sense that this diagonal argument is able to demonstrate that such sequences and schemas are in fact cardinally larger than the natural numbers and cardinally lower than the real numbers as a whole. Because what one can do in all of these zeros that you see here, in every increment of the schema, there is an increasing definition of zeros. And with an increasing definition of zeros, these zeros avail to the real numbers. They avail to the real numbers a spectra of available positions for numbers to exist, that when contracted can actually demonstrate that the real numbers are cardinally lower than such spectra. Where we look at the real numbers, one can actually very specifically transpose real numbers into such arrangements of zeros and ones. This is a well-known fact, and actually it is the premise of Boolean algebra altogether. However, when we take a look at the fact that there are increasing number of zeros in every single incremental interval, we find that one can in fact have on the real spectrum more values than they are on this conditioned spectrum, that one can in fact apply the diagonal argument against in order to re-establish the cardinality of such conditioned sequences to that of the real sequences, which includes numbers in all of these zeros over here. I would like to pause, please, that I may ask for some questions, because with questions I may be able to further elucidate what it is that I am talking about, because this may be a bit foreign to engineers and data scientists and the nature of professionals that are in this consortium. So if anyone has a very specific question, please allow me to elucidate. The important thing here is the original argument of George Cantor, and despite the fact that this is a very old argument, this is over 150 years old, and so all of us in the consortium might be wondering why we're even thinking about something like this. Why are we even bringing up an argument that is over 150 years old? The thing is, up to about 50 years ago, no one since Cohen has managed to make any single traction on this problem. And Cohen, a mathematician roughly in the 50s, managed to demonstrate that additional logical techniques that have been used are still not enough to prove this problem. And the importance of this problem, again, is that without understanding infinity, we cannot know that our theories, that our ideas are strictly accurate, especially when dealing with infinity, because it lies on a spectrum, as is what we have discovered over the years. So please, I welcome some questions that I may, and I'm so sorry for my broken voice, but I welcome some questions that I may further elucidate and elaborate the ideas and thoughts of this process, please, to all. Jagatji?
Hi. So, yeah, please feel free to ask any questions if you have.
Jagatji, I will inform to all of our audience that the formalization exists in the paper. What you see here are nothing more than trivial diagrams that anyone can concoct in order to prove a point. However, the strict ideas lie within the paper. There are multiple lemmas and theorems that lead to how one can contract the I'm just getting to the specific slide. I'm sorry, I only have one screen. So on the specific slide, how is it that one can actually contract this and reapply the diagonal argument from here to the reals is a very strict mathematical, a formal mathematical technique referred to as shrinking that we have established in order to show unequivocally that such sequences strictly form a lower cardinality than that of the reals, and a higher cardinality than that of the naturals. And so please do not, as I said, this is my first demonstration publicly anywhere. And in this demonstration, and given the time, of course, this is the best I could kind of bring the overall high level idea together, but it's so high level that none of the important intricacies can be discussed here, but I do welcome and urge everyone, please, to take a look at the paper and decide for yourselves what it is that is going on here. And with that being said, I leave the floor to Mr. Jagat.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So if no one has any questions, probably we can conclude it here. I'll just give a minute. Let's see if we have any questions.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, looks like there are no questions, Mr. Rajesh. Okay. The presentation was very insightful. I think it requires some reading from our side as well, because there is some advanced mathematics as well here.
Yes, yeah. Yes, yeah. Please. But this is the high level idea, sir. Good. This is the high level idea, and of course, it is for the professionals to decide as to whether the idea merits any truth, and the truths are in the paper. The paper discusses very clearly all of the ideas here present and uses mathematical logic very specifically in the way of arriving at the conclusions. So with that being said, Mr. Jagat, I will say thank you. And I will leave the consortium to the next speaker.